We wanted to just share today on the very important idea of how do we bring the best practices home to the Virgin Islands. You know, it's something like when you travel the world and you are doing things for other communities, and I think that when the community have the same issues, we should use the talents and gifts that God has given us. When we grew up, you know, I think too close. Turnkey, there's no more Turnkey, right? It's done. Governor, you want to rebuild that? So I grew up in a place called Turnkey, if you're from here, or 22. I did the regular thing. If you were born on that side, you go to the Government School. You went to BCD, or you went to Oliver. I think some of my sisters went to Oliver, and you would go to Kent High. That's what we did. Never seen that before. Just okay. And then they were saying that you need to get educated, you need to go away and do something great. I am not going to be a singer. We in Rock City. We're not going to be Tim Duncan or Lee of Boston. The best thing that I can do is give back what God has given us to do. And so we thank you all for coming. Because we believe that saving black boys should be our #1 priority. Our #1 priority. The video that we saw going around yesterday, the shooting that happened in Croy, is the fact that the reporter asked me on the consortium about the number of, or the level of crime that is happening. And I told him it's not really about the level of crime, because every person who lost a son whose name is over here, and we heard from Ms. Hamilton yesterday, a 14-year-old son, Justin, was shot and killed in Ras Valley. There should never be another 14-year-old boy who is killed without a community uproar. Right? Right? Because at 14, I was running that same area, Ras Valley, playing basketball at McLean Park. And that could have been me. So our idea about the summit is to bring the best of the brightest from the U.S. and across the country, not to tell us what to do, to talk about what is working, and then those of you who are going to be here for the summit for the rest of the day, to work with you to decide how do we help you do what you need to do here. That's okay? Yeah. That's what it is. So we're not trying to impose what is happening. What we're saying is that, hey, here's the best practices, and this is what we need to do. So really and truly glad that you all are here. Let me bring to the stage the Honorable Governor Albert Brand to bring some remarks. Governor.
I want to welcome those from Catch the Vision, as well as our USVI faith healers. You know, I was at the airport the other day, and it had an old Rasta man that was looking at me. And he, as I was going through the door, he says, "You have no fear." I said, "What?" He said, "You have no fear." I said, "I don't." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm a blessed man of God. I shouldn't have any fear." And I started to think about what that means. One thing, you know, running for governor showed me is people are very afraid. People are afraid of everything. I never thought I was a really brave person, but until I realized how fearful people are. And when we talk about, gun violence and young people, it's a lot of fear that drives a lot of the violence in our community. I mean, you just have a lot of young people that are scared. You know, the other day we were talking about how many people you think have guns in the Virgin Islands that are unlicensed? In St. Croix, there's 6,000 licensed firearms. So the person said to me, well, if we wanted to figure out a number of guns, let's double that to 12,000. And I said, no, they can't be that much guns. But if they are, how many of those people do you think are really shooters? Most of those people just walking around with those weapons to be in style and to be in thing and to show their friends they pocket too. But once you arm yourself, that's a whole nother level of responsibility. Like a good friend of mine told me, she went to the range to get a firearm. She took the class, and the first thing the guy asked her, "Are you ready to kill somebody?" She said she get back in her car and left. But that is the proposition that is before us, and our young men are afraid. They are afraid, and they arm themselves because they don't want to be victims. Is it a fully thought out agenda? No. They're young. You know, we just made some moves now to go back to the legislature to remove the mandatory minimums that we have on a lot of people who have committed gun violence. Whether some of them have not, some of them are just in jail for possession. And I pardon a lot of people because you realize when you got age, you ain't thinking, I hope you don't have any teenagers. I don't think I got sense till I was about 27 years old. We did a lot of dumb things. But the thing that I love about this is when you're doing God's work, you don't feel afraid. Right? When you are where you're supposed to be, you don't feel afraid. And a lot of times, you know, people when you speak of the government, most times, or a politician, want to hear about what you've done and what you accomplished and what's going to come next. I speak a lot about spirituality and love and people because that's what saves us. You know, I interviewed a lot of successful people in my time, and there's three things that they usually have. They usually have a strong family system. It don't have to be a mother and father, it could be an aunt, it could be a granny, it could be somebody. They have a family, strong family system where they're responsible to more than one person. And I'll tell you about that, is they have a strong family system because my daughters, you know, they mouthed me off when they were small. You know, they used to, you can tell me about mine. But if you tell them to tell Auntie Judy, then they get scared. They don't want to deal with them because they don't have to deal with them. All they get from them is love. They don't want to get anything else but love. So being responsible to more than one person teaches you about community and responsibility. The other thing is a very strong belief in education. In education, you know, when we think of education, we think about books and school and university, but education in the form of just being educated about anything. That you're able to learn something and learn it well and perform that skill and that you have belief in it. And the third thing is to have a great faith in something larger than yourself. God, you have those three things, you are far way along with success. Our young men growing up nowadays don't have most of that. They don't have somebody there that they can look up to and encourage them every day. They don't have a strong sense of God. They've never been to church. They say keep it real. Right. So when you don't think that there's anything greater than you or anything that connects us as a people, it's very hard to value life. The whole family connection, you know, sitting in a house and seeing birth, seeing death, and understanding that life is finite is important. So what our mission is, and I realized this a long ago, if you've been in the Virgin Islands, seen anything I do, I always end with love you. Because people can't deal with love you. They could deal with fuss you. But not love you. It makes them very uncomfortable. Try it. Love you. Tell people you love them and they get nervous. What do you want?
Yeah, right.
That's our mission. Our mission is to instill love. Love of life, love of self, love of community. To stop and stem this nonviolence because, I mean, when you see that yesterday, we can't stop it all, right? Yeah. I mean, that was just unbelievable. And to think, not one person, but several people actually sat there and videotaped that. That's even more disturbing, right? Yeah. There was nobody next to that dude to tell him, don't do that. There's no structure around him, no friend that said, no man, this is something we shouldn't do. Those are the things that we are working on. I want to say I'm happy that you're here in the Virgin Islands because we need all the help we can get. Because I love all the Virgin Islands children. It just breaks your heart because this is a small community and we used to go to the airport, you see them shackled. 14-year-old, 15-year-olds chained in handcuffs around their wrists, around their feet, flying over to St. Thomas to go to court. Not a pretty sight. I've called numerous mothers, fathers about dead children, dead young people shot in the street. It's the worst part of it, the worst. So let's have that conversation, and mostly, let's get to work. I really want to say, there's something special about Pastor Monroe, right? Like, you can't tell him no. He's just a positive beam of light all the time.
I wanted to just begin by commenting on two things that the governor shared. And the first one is about brain development, because we get letters from young men in prison, and they've been in prison 25 years, and a long time. There's some people who were like, oh no, don't read this stuff, they didn't take this there. But when you read their letters about who they've become,
Yes, sir.
Since being in prison, and you think about that one moment of a bad decision, and somebody's in jail for 28 more years than they were out, right? And that's my partner from the university right there, Susan. My best days were in the university. So one of the programs we had at UVA was a summer program called Junior University. And I was teaching at the university, and they asked me to teach a course to young men around 12 who were in danger of repeating the 7th grade. So we had it was like 4 components: reading, writing, mathematics, a course in something called brainology that taught them about brain development, right? And field trips that was included as a component. And the brainology part was teaching them that at their age, although all of them think it's little man, their brain was still developing. And a lot of us don't think about that. If you just Google it, right? Brain development, look at this. The question even comes up as you start to put it in. The brain finishes developing and maturing in the mid to late 20s. The part of the brain behind the forehead, called the prefrontal cortex, is one of the last parts to mature. This area is responsible for skills like planning, prioritizing, and making good decisions. The part of the brain is developing in your 20s. Believe it or not, we're walking around these young men who we say don't have good problem resolving skills, or we want to teach them mediation, etc. And their brain is literally still developing. When you take a person like that and you put them in jail for the rest of their life. So look at the context. So we really were able to help them understand that. And some of those young, we had about 50 at the time, and they left that program really energized and with a different thought about what they could teach. That was one. The governor talked about fear. And I remember last year at the festival in St. Croix, right? Something collapsed. I think it was a table. They made a loud sound, and everybody rushed. I was in, right? And I was in the back, and people like stormed the little gate area, and they came through there. There was a woman pregnant, she was crying, everybody was trying to leave. We had a hard time convincing people that it wasn't a gun. Those of us who were there, we had a hard time convincing, because they were sure that somebody had brought a gun in the village and that it had fired off. And that was not the case. But the reality of people living in anticipation of violence like that, or gun issues like that, so that at the sound of a table collapsing or a chair collapsing, it's a flight, right? Running to preserve your life. And that is a perfect illustration of this fear, that the governor was talking about. When I was in the legislature, I served in the legislature just before coming to serve as lieutenant governor. One of the bills that we passed had to do with guns coming into the territory. And most people don't have a clue how easy it is to bring a gun into the territory. But to travel with a weapon, in the United States, there are other governments that have the same concerns with it. But all you have to do is you buy the gun, you tell the airline that you're traveling with a gun, they tell you how to pack it, it must go in your check luggage, and they don't have any responsibility to tell the jurisdiction where you're going to that you're arriving with a gun. That's how simple it is. It's as simple as that. Governments like New York, the Virgin Islands, and other places have tried to get these airlines to identify the people who are bringing weapons into the territory. And they say they are not under any obligation because it isn't contraband. It isn't illegal. The gun has been purchased legally in whatever place it was purchased because they show the document to the airline. Whether it's legal to have it in the jurisdiction where you're going, they're not the person to ensure that that happens. So one of the things we did was we made bringing a weapon into the territory and not declaring it a felony. And a felony if you leave the airport without declaring it. The second part of the bill will have to come from someone else, will be to say, when you come to the territory, we'll search your luggage. That takes resources, but it is an important thing to do because we know that there is no gun manufacturing here, right? So all of the weapons have to be coming from someplace, and they're coming through our ports in many instances, as well as they are coming in illegally across these porous borders made of water. But when you speak about gun violence, when you speak about limiting the number of weapons in the territory, and when you connect it with violence, then you have to think about another very important thing. If you want to kill somebody, you don't need a gun. So the urge to kill, the willingness to kill, the ease with which people kill, those are the underlying areas, because you could do it with a pencil. I don't want to say how. And of course you could do it with an ice pick, you could do it with a knife, and then lots of other things, a hammer, right? We've seen all of those. I've seen all of those in my days working as an attorney, of how people kill people. So guns, that's important, but the urge to kill, how do we deal with people who are willing, able to kill, and to not to think about the consequences of it? All the other people who are attached to the person who dies, and all the other people who are attached to them, their own families who suffer when they're taken away. And so the work that you're doing, and as the governor, I welcome you here, the work that you're doing is so important if we speak about the ways in which we can reach people on the level of, at the spiritual level, of the value of life, and the value of my life, and the value of your life, and the value of all the lives of people around us. Because we came here for some reason, we didn't come here just to die. We came here with purpose, and there's so much purpose locked away in these prisons, and of course locked away in these graveyards of people who have died without getting the opportunity to show and to share with us what it is they came to the world to do. So I welcome you and I thank you, and we support you in this work, and the outcomes can only be to the benefit of our community. So thank you so very much.
I'm going to take you back about 4 years. We had a worldwide pandemic in 2020, and we all experienced it. Collectively, we got together and changed how we related to each other for the greater good. Most people received a vaccine and a booster shot, or several booster shots. We all started wearing masks, even on planes. Something that was unthinkable in 2019 became commonplace and even expected in 2020. I have a very fashionable friend who had a different color mask to match every outfit. We ensured that we had a clean COVID-19 test before we flew away from or returned to the VI. We stood 6 feet apart from each other. The distances were measured by stickers on the floor in the post office and many other businesses. In my post office on Veterans Drive, these stickers are still on the floor. Businesses with cashiers put up plastic barriers. We started working from home. Zoom calls became a phenomenon. We checked on our elderly, sometimes from outside their homes, as we were aware of the special danger that COVID-19 placed on them. The courts closed for close to a year, if I remember correctly, and when the courts reopened for business slowly, plastic barriers were placed around the judge, the courtroom staff, and the witness stands. Though plastic barriers have been largely removed from most, if not all, businesses, the barriers in the courtrooms remain. They remind us of what we were willing to do to protect each other. Gun violence has been at an alarming level for a very long time, long before the 2020 pandemic. Since 2020, firearm-related injury has been the leading cause of death for U.S. children and adolescents aged 1 to 19, surpassing motor vehicle crashes, cancer, drug overdose, and poisoning. In 2022, over 48,000 people died from firearm-related injuries in America, including suicides, homicides, and unintentional deaths. That is over 8,000 more lives lost in 2019 and over 16,000 more lives lost than in 2010. These figures are from the United States Surgeon General's recent report issued in June. The Surgeon General has declared that firearm violence is a public health crisis. The Surgeon General's study noted that 54% of adults reported that either they or a family member had experienced a firearm-related incident. The United States leads the world in gun violence. In the United States, the rate of firearm deaths is 36.4 per million. The next closest country, Canada, had 6.2 deaths per million. Thus, the United States has had 6 times more deaths as a result of gun violence than its neighbor to the north. I welcome the Surgeon General's report. I welcome the imprimatur of the Surgeon General, recognizing a problem that we have known for far too long. Gun violence hits a little harder here in the Virgin Islands. We are a small community, less than 100,000 people by the last census. Yet in St. Thomas alone, at its current pace, we are projected to have 181 criminal cases involving violence and 56 of those involving firearms. This public health crisis is at our shores and has been here for a very long time. But who can we look to for relief? I don't think the courts, at least on the national level, will be of much help. The United States Supreme Court seems to be bent on a path to give greater access to guns rather than restrict them. In a Supreme Court case recently called New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, the Supreme Court struck down a New York law limiting who could carry a handgun in public and laid out a new test for determining whether a gun regulation is constitutional. The court said that the lower courts should examine the nation's history of firearm regulation in determining whether if a state has violated the Second Amendment. But when Justice Thomas spoke of the nation's history, I'm not entirely sure he had the Virgin Islands in mind. So we are going to have to look to ourselves. Like with the pandemic, we must minister to ourselves. We must engage in a gun violence set of protocols. We must place our care for our fellow people in our own hands. When it comes to gun violence, we must minister through our actions. As the scripture says, what does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to him, depart in peace, be warmed and filled, but you do not give him the things that are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus, also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Like with the COVID-19, we need a multifaceted approach. We did not get through it with just masks or distance or vaccines, working from home, plastic barriers, or checking on loved ones or neighbors. It took all of those measures. And even with that, we lost far too many people. And we are losing far too many people to gun violence. Far too many young people are exposed to gun violence. So what are you willing to do to curb this public health crisis? Are you willing to join or form a local gun violence protection organization? For example, the God Squad is a national organization is now branching out here to the Virgin Islands. In addition, States United for Prevention of Gun Violence is also a national umbrella organization for state gun violence. It has groups in 31 states, but no group in the Virgin Islands. I'm not affiliated with the States United, but I will say that I agree with its goal to promote solutions at a state level, and the God Squad also at a state level, at a territorial level. We need firearm solutions that work for the Virgin Islands. That said, are you willing to write a letter to the editor or use social media to support efforts to stop gun violence? Are you willing to step out of your comfort zone? Are you willing to host an evening of information to educate your friends about gun violence? Are you willing to volunteer at a library to engage young people, especially boys, in educational pursuits? Are you willing to mentor a young man? If you own a business, can your business use an intern? Can you impart your lifetime of knowledge to these young men? Can you fundraise to help organizations like 100 Black Men? Can you share a kind word to a young man on the street? That said, all of you are here. Your presence shows that you recognize the crisis at our shores. Please spread the engagement and fellowship you have experienced over these 2 days throughout the territory. Like with COVID-19, let's help the rest of the community change how we operate for the greater good. You are involved, and I thank you.